So in that respect, talking about the kind of the access, do you think underwater photography is accessible to, say, amateur photographers? So if there's an amateur photographer who's, watching this podcast and, looking at your images and reveling in these great images, but they're thinking, well, I'm never going to be able to take an image like that because I don't have all the gear. I'll just jump past that image. We'll come back to it in a minute. But I've got this image that you sent through to me, and I'll just make it big so we can see, the amount of equipment that you do need. I mean, if
Hmm.
an amateur photographer looks at your images, what advice would you give them in order to be able to maybe take away some things? Maybe not just about underwater photography, but about
Hmm.
how they approach photography and how they can make their images better.
Well, if they saw the images I was taking, like 12 years ago, then they would not feel bad about how their images look. So just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But I've also found that, like, if I look at an image that I took last year, like some of the, or the year before, or however many years ago, I always see things I can fix about it, even if people are like, that's an amazing image. And like I said earlier, I think we're our own harshest critics, but it also means that we're improving, right? So you see a
Mm.
way that you can improve your image. And I think that's an important part of it. Because if you just look at all your images and are like, these are the best, then how are you ever going to get any better or push yourself to, like become a better photographer and a better storyteller? And I think the storytelling part of it is a huge part of it for me. So I think if you're going to get into underwater photography, like the number one thing is to just be really comfortable in the water and take a
Mm.
lot of like scuba diving classes and also free diving classes to learn the safety aspects of it, which we touched on a little bit earlier. But just understanding like how you behave underwater to not scare things away, and how to be graceful underwater, and how to hold your breath for longer so you can stay down a little bit longer to see at that photo. I mean, I was a dive master, like a scuba diving dive master before I took a free diving class, because I was like, oh, I've been snorkeling my
Ah.
whole life. And that completely, like, at the end of a 2-day class, you can hold your breath, a static breath hold, for like 5 minutes. I mean, it's a completely different way of
Wow.
breathing and
Okay.
thinking about your breath. It's Yeah. And so I would encourage people to take like other classes that are not photography related, because it will wildly just change your ability to be in the water in a completely different space and feel safe and feel comfortable in the water. And I think another huge part of it for me has been, like, again, outside of the photography part of it, I'm not a gear person, and my partner Ian, who's in this picture actually on the cover of Scuba Diving Magazine, he's really into the gear and I'm really into the story. And so don't be afraid to ask questions. I've asked him what are probably like very dumb questions about photography, especially at the beginning, like 10 years ago. Don't be afraid to ask those questions, but also don't feel like that holds you back because you don't have a camera with like a 10-inch glass dome on it. That's not what all my cameras look like. There's been an evolution of like little cameras all the way up to bigger cameras. Um, and just having the ability to like be in the location with the right species at the right time or the right people is, I think, like a much bigger part of the process than actually taking the picture. I mean, once you get there, you have to have the right shutter speed to not make it blurry, and it's dark and usually underwater, and so having the right lights and stuff will help too. But you can always like learn that. I think it's harder to learn how to have a good eye and come up with good stories, than it is to maybe like learn how to, like, the technical parts of taking a picture.